Sean Clifford is already quarterback 2 in Green Bay, if you can believe that one. We're reacting and analyzing every single Penn State Nittany Lion picked in the 2023 NFL Draft, plus some of the ones that have already been signed as free agents.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Zach Seyko. I am your host, and I am joined today again by a very special guest because he does everything when it comes to the NFL draft. He was analyzing it live in real time. He does great work over at JTFB on YouTube, and that is Josh Taylor, also an analyst for Rivals.com. Josh, thanks so much for coming back on the show to talk post-NFL draft for the Penn State Nittany Lions, everybody that got picked and the other ones that got signed. Not all of them, but some are starting to make their way to the new NFL homes.
Yeah, Zach, we had some surprising picks, honestly, that kind of caught me by surprise. But we talked a little bit about it on the show before the draft, especially like Brenton Strange, and we'll get into it. But also some really good signings afterwards. And you see my flag and you see the helmet, you might figure out which one I'm most excited about.
Yeah, you got two Penn State Nittany Lions on that team now, and they're both wide receivers. Again, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. And Locked On Nittany Lions is your go-to podcast for PennState.Rivals.com. Visit HappyValleyInsider.com or PennState.Rivals.com for everything Penn State athletics, including post-NFL draft analysis. Again, that's what we're doing on this show. We're going to go in order, everybody that got picked, and then the cluster of undrafted free agents. And Sean Clifford is not going to be the last one because he didn't get signed. He actually got picked. He had no choice but to go to group. He landed in a really good spot. That's why I wanted to lead off the show with it. I love the landing spot for Sean Clifford, and I'm not wishing anything ill towards Jordan Love, but like you said, we're going to break it all down. So let's start with the guy who was picked first out of all the Penn State Nittany Lion prospects. That was Joey Porter Jr. Personally, I mean, as a Steelers fan, right, I love the spot because Steelers need cornerback help. They need young cornerback help. The last time that they drafted a cornerback like this, it really didn't Artie Burns wasn't exactly the guy and ran out of Pittsburgh fairly quickly. But then it's more about the fact that Joey Porter Jr. has the relationship with head coach Mike Tomlin. Joey Porter Sr. played there, right? And now his career, he was leaving Pittsburgh as Mike Tomlin was coming in. He didn't stay all that long, but then he became a coach. And so Joey Porter Jr. has that relationship with Mike Tomlin, the coaches already. And I'm glad that Pittsburgh gambled. I didn't think he was going to last until pick 32, but they gambled. And they got a win. I know they were close to trading out, but I think the Steelers knew with the way that they drafted Broderick Jones, right? They jumped up ahead of the Jets because they knew they were looking for a franchise left tackle, so they jumped ahead of them. But they were trying to trade out of that 32 spot, Josh.
Yeah, I was kind of worried. I was like, if you told me that the Steelers' first two picks would have been Broderick Jones and Joey Porter Jr., I'm like, that's A+. Like, it doesn't get any better than that. You have a franchise left tackle, and then you have a franchise corner adding. And he comes in with a guy, Patrick Peterson, who, can you think of a better mentor, like style-wise, but then also just resume-wise, being able to, just get coached up by him all the time? I really like Levi Wallace, obviously former walk-on at Alabama. Love his story. I'm an Alabama fan, low-key. So I've always liked Levi. Witherspoon, it's kind of been hit or miss on the other side. So it just seems like the Steelers really needed that solidified corner two to kind of match with Patrick Peterson. I think it's a perfect fit. Like I said, when you talk about scheme, just letting him, press on the line like he wants to, put his hands on the receivers and the release before they get into the routes and everything, and then just play free how he really wants to. And when you have a guy like Patrick Peterson, I know he's a little bit older, he still looked pretty good last year. Made some big plays throughout the season. So you feel comfortable saying we have one side locked down. Joey Porter, you can kind of, play how you want to on the other side. And we're going to figure out the back end. Obviously, you got Minkah Fitzpatrick, Keanu Neal on the back end. So there's a lot of big-time playmakers behind them. to where he is allowed to just play how he wants to. So it's obviously a feel-good pick. Like I said, you see the pictures and videos with him with his dad on the field during the Super Bowl and everything. It's just like that legacy pick. So that was one of my favorite parts of the draft, but also fit-wise, we mentioned it in the show before, the Steelers was a perfect place for him to go.
Yeah, it was the one that made the most sense. I thought Seattle made sense, but they already took their cornerback in Devin Witherspoon, because that honestly, that could have happened. Say they went with like Jalen Carter or something. They had a different draft strategy. Obviously, something came up in their analysis that said like, okay, let's reach for Witherspoon a little bit. I thought he could have been a fringe top 10, but they took him 5th, right? But if they went with Carter, then Joey Porter Jr. at 20 made a little more sense. They obviously took Jackson Smith and Jigba, but Joey Porter,
home run.
Yeah. Joey Porter Jr., I think he brought up a good point himself, because I watched him do an interview, and the question was asked, what do you think about people that say you can't play off ball coverage? And Joey said, well, I played off ball coverage when I was under Brent Pry, so I can do it all. So the question mark saying that, well, he doesn't fit into certain schemes, I think it should be put to rest, because he's played in those early in his football career.
Yeah, I think, and I agree with that. And then like for Washington, a lot of people ask like, hey, Josh, you know a lot about Joey Porter Jr. How does he fit here? And in my opinion, because we did run a lot of zone, I want him to just play where he's more comfortable,
or he's best at,
more times than not. Yeah, I don't want to ask him like, hey, we know you're better at this, but for our defense, we want you to kind of adjust. That's why I think the Steelers, like I said, I think they're really going to let him play how he wants to, where a team like Washington, he would have been playing way off more than I'm comfortable with. You know, sometimes his footwork's a little sloppy, a little slow. He doesn't get his hips the way he needs to. And then, of course, like the ball production, like the interceptions and stuff isn't there. And that's something we were looking for, obviously, getting Forbes, who has the most pick sixes in college football history. So it's just all about fit with a lot of these guys. You think about it with quarterbacks, like, oh, so-and-so needs to go somewhere really good where you can develop, get a chance. It's like that for every single position, I'm telling you. And that's why it's really big. And people are like, oh, so-and-so reach. Like, no, they got their guy before someone else got their guy. And I think that's the case with Joey Porter Jr. And the Steelers just got super lucky that he landed technically as a first-round pick because of the Dolphins. They screwed it all up with their forfeited pick. He's picked 32. He's a first-round draft pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, and something I just want to point out in general, right? The NFL draft is not like a fantasy draft where you go in a snake, right? You don't pick at 7th and then you have one of the later picks in the 2nd round, or vice versa, right? You're picking at the end of the 1st round, and that means you have an early 2nd round pick. So if your guy isn't going to be at your next pick, you are going to take him. And that's what the Steelers did. They sat, they waited. They said, we believe that Joey Porter Jr. will be at 32. We don't know that he's going to be at 35 or 36, which is why they didn't trade out, because other teams were calling them about Will Levis, and the Titans, again, they kind of played the waiting game as well, and got lucky. Now, normally, when we previewed them, Josh, we had them in order of ranking and where they kind of projected to go in the draft. And so the next prospect should have been Jair Brown, but it wasn't. It was Brenton Strange. We'll start with Brenton Strange before we go to a short ad break, and then get into more of the prospects. But Brenton Strange at tight end goes 61st overall in the 2nd round to the Jacksonville Jaguars. You and I were kind of shocked. You know, we exchanged some texts and said, wow, back-to-back Penn State guys. Juice Scruggs surprised a little bit at 62 as well. But I think Brenton Strange at 61 is an intriguing pick, but something that we talked about in the preview. We said that Brenton Strange could be a 2nd round pick just because some NFL teams did like him in that spot.
Yeah, I mean, he went ahead of some big name tight ends. I mean, guys like Darnell Washington, who we thought were going to go in the 1st. And that, like I said, that's something that was brought up by a lot of, draft heads leading up to the draft, was that like, hey, Brenton Strange is getting some talk of a top 65 pick coming up in the draft. And I was like, oof. I'm like, it's definitely possible. But, this is a deep tight end draft. It wouldn't surprise me if some teams like, hey, let's wait on them. But the Jacksonville Jaguars pulled the trigger. And I think it's a really interesting spot because bringing back Evan Ingram was big for them. A lot of production last year really helped out a young quarterback with Trevor Lawrence. But then you look, and we'll talk about Parker Washington as well, but you look at that receiving core with Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley's over there now. So they have a ton of weapons. And this year really just helped his stock tremendously. And it's funny because when they show the highlights of Brenton Strange, they show the Purdue catch, before halftime and all these times where he's leaping. But they're showing a lot of those goal line formations where he's out and lined up in like in the line. And he's blocking for some of these big time running backs for Penn State. So it's something that a lot of tight ends in this draft were lacking, was that ability to just sit in line as a tight end, not as just a wide receiving threat, and do the down and dirty, put your hand in the dirt and block for your running back or protect your quarterback if you have to. So I think that goes a long ways for Brenton Strange. There was concerns of his size and so on, whatever, but the numbers showed out. And last year, I think, was just a great highlight tape and resume to send out to these teams. Like, look, this is what I can do at the next level.
As far as the Jacksonville Jaguars situation, yeah, because he cashed in, right? He had his best season at Penn State. It's a crowded tight end room. I know things have happened to Theo Johnson off the field, Tyler Warren, bumps and bruises, and then all the talent, the couple talented freshmen that they have, and then the rising guys like a Khalil Dinkins and a Jerry Cross. So this is a talented group. I'm not saying Brenton Strange isn't better than them, but you do have to give reps to some of those other guys as well, whether it is Johnson, whether it is a healthy Warren, and then any of the youngsters that are working their way in. We saw Khalil Dinkins catch a touchdown pass. He was winning winter workout warrior battles, right? And Brenton Strange, I think, said, you know what, I've had enough of college football. And he landed in a very good situation, because if you look at the reports right now, we'll see how long this carries over, but Evan Ingram is holding out. He does not want to play on the franchise tag. He wants a legitimate deal. So if this is something that happens to leak into the season, Brenton Strange is tight end number 1 in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence, who likes to spread the football around.
That's true. And he was super reliable for Sean Clifford. It seemed like every time that Penn State needed a big time catch, like I said, not only that Purdue game, you think about the Northwestern game where it's like these close games, they just needed someone reliable to come through. It was tight end screens with them, which they do all the time with Evan Ingram in Jacksonville, but then also they can go deep with him, and he's deadly after the catch. He's super hard to get down. He's bouncing off of people. He's putting them in the grave with the stiff arm. Like, he just has a great overall game to him that I think Jacksonville is really intrigued with. And I didn't know that about Evan Ingram, that he's holding out on the tag. I know they did tag him. They really want him to play, but if he holds out, I think Brenton Strange can get some really good valuable snaps from T-Law.
And Evan Ingram's not a blocking tight end, right? He's purely a pass catcher. So if Brenton Strange is going to see a lot of reps just because they will use him he'll be tight end 1B in the sense of anytime they go 2 tight ends, he's going to be the first guy off the bench, because I don't think they like the other backup, and that's Luke Farrell, Ohio State. They're not as interested in him anymore.
No, for me, he's more of like a camp body. But like you said with Evan Ingram, he's more of that wide tight end, kind of like what Dalton Kincaid was at Utah. But if you can be able to do both, it helps your offense. And it's not like, hey, Evan Ingram's on the field. We know that they're going to throw the ball, that he's not going to be blocking for Travis Etienne or Tank Bigsby.
Yeah. And Juice Scruggs and Jair Brown are coming up. Josh Taylor on the show to analyze all of the Penn State Nittany Lions selected in the NFL draft. First, let's hear from our sponsor of today's episode, and that is FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel, because the NBA playoffs are now here in full swing, because right now new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is right, $1,000 in bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. There's great promotions every day at FanDuel. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Plus, I love that it is user-friendly. That is the biggest feature for me personally. I use FanDuel Sportsbook, and you get paid instantly. So when you want to cash out with your winnings, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So there's no better place to place your bets on playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is right, $1,000. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus in select states. First online real money wager only. A $10 deposit is required. Refund issued as a non-withdraw. Bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions do apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com for more info. It is Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. And as the month of May approaches here, a lot of recruiting news is going to be coming up and everything else, but we're talking NFL draft post analysis after all the picks. Penn State Nittany Lions now have new homes, and we're going to talk about some of the undrafted free agents as well. Josh, let's move to, again, we're going in order here, right? I didn't think this would be Juice Scruggs. I saw him, best case scenario, I thought 4th round just because of the versatility. But this is another case of, you look at the depth chart, the Houston Texans took him 62nd overall. I thought that was cool. Back-to-back Penn State Nittany Lions taken in round 2 of the draft. And Juice Scruggs goes to the Houston Texans, where honestly, he might start at center day 1.
Yeah, and to me, this was the surprise of the draft, and it's nothing against Juice Scruggs. It's just he was taken that high in the draft. But yeah, you look at the depth charts. Scott Quisenberry, who they got from the Chargers this past offseason, is a guy he's going to compete with for that number 1 spot at center. But I'm telling you, this is why you go to some of these, postseason events like the Shrine Bowl, where you're in front of all 32 teams. You go back to the pro day when Juice Scruggs is finishing guys. That poor guy holding the sled pushes him over, finishing a block one time, and all the scouts are oohing and ahhing. And he's talking to all 32 teams, and there's a couple teams that stood out even more. It was like 49ers, Texans. There's another team. They said he had multiple.
I think the Patriots will. I really liked him.
Yeah, so he had multiple conversations with a lot of these teams. So, and a lot of people are saying, like, yep, his name's heating up. He's getting a lot more talk because of his versatility. He's very comfortable at center, but also guard, like, with ease. I feel like he could do it. But then you look at the experience at center, being able to comfortably come in and start day 1, like you said. I think he does. I think he could easily compete for that center 1 spot, through training camp and everything. But just having that experience, and then you look at how good the line was for Penn State last year as well. I think Landon's going to be a first-round borderline guy, obviously Olu. So that line's looking really good. Penn State's just pushing guys out in the factory now. This is huge for Penn State in general with when it comes to draft-wise and, saying like, hey, look what we can do with you. If you come here, we're going to develop you. Obviously, they're killing it with the offensive line right now. Juice Scruggs is a big winner in this draft. I think the Texans got a dog. I think he fits D'Amico Ryan's kind of team mentality. I like how Juice carries himself. He's a great natural leader on the field. Like I said, he's just a physical, finished guy. He's not nice. He's not going to tell you, good block. He's going to hit you again when you try to get up. And I like it. I think, more I thought about it, I was like, man, that was so high. But at the same time, I really like the fit. I think it is a big need. They got Jarrett Patterson too from Notre Dame late in the draft. So he's a guy that can, rotate. He can be a depth guy, guard, center. He played both at Notre Dame. But Juice Scruggs, center 1 for the Texans. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, and if they need, I think that's why they did pick up Patterson in case someone like Shaq Mason doesn't live up to expectations.
Yeah.
They took Kenyon Green a year ago with their first pick. Yeah, so they have a good offensive line, but say any of those guards do go down with an injury or they're just unavailable to play, you can slide Juice Scruggs over, and then I think that's where Patterson comes into the fold at that point. I'm not going to say Cushenberry doesn't deserve any respect, right? They did bring him in, but this is going to be an interesting camp battle to keep an eye on, and I'm going to give the advantage to the youngster because Cushenberry hasn't had a decorated career. But the Texans went out and got him. They wanted him, but at the same time, then why are you drafting 2 centers if you don't exactly feel all that confident in the one you just signed, right?
Yeah, I think what you said was interesting. If Shaq Mason doesn't look good, who he's not all that anyways, you can move Scruggs over to right guard, and then Scott Quisenberry could be that starting center if you have to, because you want the best combination of the lines possible. It's not like, oh, well, Scruggs is the best center, so we have to play him there. You want to cover all 5 spots as even and balanced as possible. You don't want some gaping hole on that right side, especially with a CJ Stroud rookie quarterback back there.
Yeah, no, I like the way that the Texans have done things. That's just in general.
This is my sneaky little second favorite team. I've always kind of liked the Texans, but I love D'Amico. I love a lot of these guys that they've drafted, a lot of Bama dudes as well. So I like this team. I'm going to watch this team a good bit next year.
They're going to be fun by the end of the season, right? They'll have growing pains, and then they're going to wreck some team seasons down the stretch, week 12 and beyond. Let's move to round 3, pick 87. I thought this was one of the steals of the draft. We talk about reaches, but Jair Brown falls to a good scenario, very good scenario with the San Francisco 49ers. Now, D'Amico Ryans does leave. I would like D'Amico Ryans to be his coach, but the 49ers have Steve Wilks as their defensive coordinator. Yeah, that was a huge get for them, losing Ryans as your DC, but then you really don't, you don't replace, you reload, right? And this is a situation where Jair Brown already good safety play already with the San Francisco 49ers, right? With Gibson, and then Tufanga is already there. Someone who reminds me, of course, I'm going to have to make the comparison, right? Troy Polamalu, just the way that he runs around. But Jair Brown, they use 3 safety looks. At least that's what Steve Wilks is probably going to do a lot of the time in San Francisco. Yeah. So Brown, not going to be a starter, but going to play starter-like reps.
Yeah, he's going to get a lot of reps. Obviously, they lost Jimmy Ward, who was one of their favorites safeties there. He follows D'Amico to the Texans. So that's a big loss. But he had some injuries here and there as well. Anyways, like I said, Hufanga is a turnover machine. He's one of these like sleeper guys who wasn't like a household name, and now he just balls out whenever the 49ers need him to. And like I said, with Gibson, came over from, I think he was at Chicago before, if I remember correctly. But they do play a lot of, I'll just call it overall big nickel, to where you do have 3 safeties on the field, kind of like what the Bears are going to, they've been doing with Brisker and so on, kind of like what Penn State did the year before when they had Jair, and then you saw Brisker more up front, kind of like in that box protecting the middle. He could play deep as well. He kind of just moved around all over the field. The 49ers are going to do that. Steve Wilks is a fantastic coach. I thought Carolina was stupid for letting him go, but they have a really good coaching staff still. But I'm telling you, the 49ers, I have a ton of 49er friends that do a lot of great content over there. So if you need someone to listen to Jair Brown and keep up with them, let me know. I got you. But man, I think, I don't know if I said this with you on our show before, but I talked with them because I saw that he visited the 49ers, and I was telling them, I was like, man, I hope Jair goes to the 49ers because that is such a good fit for him. When you think about their identity, like I said, getting these turnovers, being physical, stopping the run, your DBs coming up, they're very instinctive. Like everything about the blueprint of the 49ers has that feel of kind of like Penn State does. Really good outside corners. Like I said, they cause a lot of turnovers, good linebacker core, and really solid up front. I can't think of a better spot for him to go. Even if he's not the starter, he's going to be a very on the field and very often for the 49ers. I love this. This is honestly one of my favorite fits of the whole draft. Like not even just Penn State, but I wanted Jair here and I wanted Joey Porter Jr. in the Steelers.
Yeah, and Jair Brown also helps out his case in the fact that he can play both safety spots. He's not married to the free safety. He's not glued to the strong safety. So whether it's Hufanga or it's Gibson, they need a breather. Again, they do go to the 3 safety look. I feel confident that the 49ers feel confident to put Brown and say, okay, Gibson's coming out. You're playing center field, essentially. And the 49ers love to get so creative. That's just the way that Kyle Shanahan wants to run the system. And you bring in a guy like Steve Wilks, who is going to do his own thing, right? They are the defensive head coach. So he's going to run his defense, but with elements that Kyle Shanahan trusts him to do as well. So this is a win for Jair Brown to go into a situation where he can be the best. And ultimately, I think he's going to be a captain of that defense in 3-4 years' time.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, like, the knock on him was he doesn't have, like, the track speed of a lot of safeties.
Yeah.
But the way he plays, he doesn't need it. I think he was the smartest. And like I said, when you think about instincts, but then also just IQ-wise, where he can read out plays and know what's happening and he can beat you there, that's where he makes up for that. Like, he doesn't need track speed because he's going to be in position to make a play. And he's shown that with all the interceptions he's had throughout his career, going from JUCO and then going to Penn State. No problem at all for him. I think that track speed's an underrated thing for safeties, unless you are playing single high and you need someone that can cover like Tyrann Mathieu to where you're going sideline to sideline. But I still think that he can read a play out while it's happening and say, okay, this is what's happening. I want to be in position to intercept this ball. So I think he makes up for it. I think he was the smartest safety in the whole draft. We think he was safety 1. A lot of people think he was safety 1 because I don't think Brian Branch is really a safety. But I think they got a heck of a steal, especially not having a pick until the 3rd round for the 49ers. We won't talk about them getting a kicker, but they knocked it out of the park with Jair Brown, at least.
Locked On Nittany Lions is your go-to podcast over at happyvalleyinsider.com. Penn State rivals, everything you want Penn State athletics, you go over there, happyvalleyinsider.com. Final segment of Locked On Nittany Lions, and Josh Taylor coming on the show, joining me. Josh Taylor does incredible work over with Penn State rivals, of course, recruiting analyst, but also does his own work. Check it out, JTFB on YouTube. Josh, what else do you want to add? Seriously, you do such incredible stuff individually. What do you want to share with the people that are tuned in for this?
I just love football. That's that's the most important thing, honestly. Like I said, with recruiting, but honestly, just like the NFL draft is my favorite event. And I said it today, like just seeing like the draft happen, like pick by pick. You see like the videos of these players getting picked and the phone calls and like how much it means to them. Like that's my favorite part, just seeing like all that work that they've put into like the dream happens and now it's time for them to translate to the NFL. I just think the draft is awesome. This is like hands down my favorite time. I haven't slept in like a week, it feels like, because of the draft. But no, I mean, I appreciate it. Like I said, JTFB on YouTube's where you can find most of my stuff, and then on Twitter as well. So.
And Locked On Nittany Lions, of course, available on YouTube. We're streaming this as a live episode on YouTube. And then wherever you get your podcast, you can find us as well. Okay, round number 5, pick 149, Sean Clifford. That's right. Not undrafted, and somebody that is not going to be holding clipboards. He could be on an NFL field sooner than you think because he is QB2 with the Green Bay Packers. They liked him a lot. They took him over a bunch of remaining quarterbacks that were there that they could have gathered. And this is someone, again, that is not a camp arm. He is not there just to be a scout offensive player. He is there to show up, to compete, and be quarterback number 2 in case Jordan Love is not ready to go. Aaron Rodgers is with the New York Jets. Jordan Love is, of course, the presumed starter. I'm not going to sit here and say, okay, Sean Clifford's going to beat him out. That's why they brought him in. No. That's not. But if Jordan Love, again, is not available, who's next up? Sean Clifford.
Yeah, I think this was the best spot for him. When you go back and look at all the places he visited and like posted on Instagram and stuff, it was Green Bay, the Ravens, the Eagles. I want to say there was like one or two other teams. Broncos, and the Jets might have been one. I can't remember.
I think the Jets were, and that was before the Rodgers trade.
Yeah, so it was a bunch of places that now have a really solidified QB1. So obviously you got Lamar, you got the Jalen Hurts, you got Aaron Rodgers, Russ, but you still like you have the solidified QB1 where it's like, okay, Sean's only seen the field if something bad happens, like injury or just something happens. Yeah, but now he goes to Green Bay, where I have zero faith in Jordan Love. Okay. He should be good, but we haven't seen enough to say, yeah, he's going to be good. If I'm Clifford, like I'm outside every day throwing the ball, like guys, I might have a chance to actually see the field pretty often. Obviously he's going to show out in preseason and have a chance to impress there, but he showed the Packers something when he went on that visit to say, look, you should get me in the 5th round ahead of a lot of these quarterbacks. And honestly, it really didn't surprise me. I thought he would be drafted. I didn't think it'd be this high. No. Yeah, I was kind of surprised at some of the names he was taking over. But I'm telling you, this is something that I have so much weight in on quarterbacks. It is experience in college football. I'm telling you, like the Trey Lances, I don't want them because I have no faith that they've seen enough in college football to say, oh yeah, I can make the jump to the NFL. Like you haven't been through the ringer, the good, the bad, the ugly, the we're down, or, you know, I got laid out at Auburn and now I got to get up and lead this team down the field. Like a lot of quarterbacks haven't been through that. And I'm telling you, I loved Justin Herbert because of it, because he had so much experience, and not every experienced quarterback is going to be really good. But Clifford showed last year, he got away from the turnovers, you know, compared to the seasons before that, played much better ball, but he just showed like, I love this game. He showed a lot of passion. He could take a hit, get up, keep it moving, and he can make some big time throws in the meantime.
Packers will have a ground game. The offensive line, I think, is solid. It hasn't been the way it was in years past, but the wide receiver situation, I mean, you now have veterans, right, with Romeo Doubs, and Christian Watson came on after the injury. So it's not your Devontae Adams vintage Randall Cobb setup, but
Jaden Reed's a big sleeper too.
Yeah, they took him in the second round.
And then my guy Dontavian Wicks from UVA, wahoo wah, really shifty guy. I think he'll see the field a good bit. Bo Melton a little slept on. From Rutgers, Samari Torrey had a good little reps last year. So it's a bunch of like under the radar names. Obviously, they don't have like the, you know, Donald Drivers or anything like that anymore. But I think these are a bunch of really young guys that have some upside to him. So I think he's going to have some fun with these guys. I think the depth at wide receiver is good too. They took, it seemed like every tight end in the draft with Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. So he's got a little young team that he can kind of rally around. I think the young guys are going to look up to him too. You know, obviously not saying they don't like Jordan
He's an
Love.
Older guy in the room, right? 24?
Yeah, he's the vet.
Yeah.
He's the rookie vet. But I think this is a really good spot for him. I think, you know, not saying Jordan Love's going to be bad, so they'll pull him. But you just never know. I think this is the most opportunistic team for him. I'll say that.
Yeah, and coaching staff matters, environment matters, the fan base matters. He's not going to an abysmal situation where you have to rebuild. Green Bay is a good franchise, right? It's a respectable franchise.
Historic, yeah.
They're always anticipating to be at or in the around or in the playoffs, right? I love the head coaching situation. Of course, you have Matt LaFleur as your head coach, and they've been going. I know Aaron Rodgers was leading that team, right? That was a winning, but it's a winning culture with a proven coaching staff. Even though they did have Aaron Rodgers, LaFleur comes in, inherits a really good system from Mike McCarthy. But this isn't a team that it's like we're losing. Losing teams lose. They make losing plays. Winning teams make winning plays. And the Green Bay Packers will have a winning type of setup for Sean Clifford to succeed in. And that's why. So you look at a Jamarcus Russell, right? The Oakland Raiders are a bad franchise. The Las Vegas Raiders are still a bad franchise in this current day.
Yeah.
And Jamarcus Russell failed because of that, okay? Because they didn't give him the support system around him. Sean Clifford will have that support system and benefit. I'm not saying he's going to be a Pro Bowl starter, but if he comes in, don't be surprised if he wins a couple of games if Jordan Love cannot go.
Yeah. And I think you talked about Green Bay. Going from Penn State, same thing. Historic program, high expectations. They expect to at least make big bowl games every year. Yeah, it's going to be cold. He's used to the snow. That's no change for him. But just expectation-wise, environment-wise, fan base-wise, it's an easy transition going from Penn State to Green Bay.
All right, the undrafted actually, we have one more, and that is Parker Washington. I do not want to forget Parker Washington because this is a sleeper, but he doesn't go to an ideal situation with the Jacksonville Jaguars, Josh. Somebody was taken in the 6th round. I guess the injury concerns did bug some NFL teams, and the Jaguars are saying, well, this is someone that we can let him work his way back individually before he gets in the fold, but Calvin Ridley's coming back. You already have Charlie Kirk. Jamal Agnew shows that when he's used more of in just like just in a special way, he's not your traditional slot receiver, but you can utilize him in so many different ways as just a pure athlete, somebody with the football in his hands. He's a notable player. And then Zay Jones is kind of this boomer bust kind of guy, but he'll have his day when he has 7 catches and 150 yards, and fantasy team managers are like, oh my goodness, where did this come from? So yes, Trevor Lawrence, like we said, likes to spread the football around, and Brenton Strange could benefit from that. Parker Washington, not so much, because he's going to be buried on the depth chart.
Yeah, and the thing with Christian Kirk, they paid him a ton of money. So, he is their solidified, big slot guy. And I like Christian Kirk a lot. I think he's super underrated. He's actually someone I had to study for Scouting Academy, and I gained a ton of respect for him. But going back and remember those tapes I watched when he was at Arizona, and it was him, and there was another slot receiver, Moore. They were kind of Rondale Moore. They were really competing for that slot spot. And that's kind of what Parker's going to be like, the Rondale Moore of the Jaguars form now. Jamal Agnew, like you said, I don't know how good he's going to be in that slot.
Well, they just use him in so many different ways. It's Calvin Ridley that changes all of this.
Yeah, Calvin Ridley. And then, like you said, Zay Jones, I think, is a lock to start. But I think Parker's, I don't want to say he's limited to the slot, but I think that's where you think he could get the most out of it, catching balls across the middle, showing his yak ability, going up high point and catches, making these crazy catches that you saw him do at Penn State. So I think with Ridley being there, and then with Christian Kirk being able to play inside and outside, Parker doesn't have that, in my opinion. He doesn't have that big body that Christian Kirk does to where he can line up outside. And if he does, I'm just not too big on it being out there. I think at the next level of the slot where he's comfortable at. So maybe maybe they say, hey, Zay, come off the field one time. We're going to put Christian Kirk as the X or the Y, the Z, and then we're going to put Parker in the slot and play it that way. So I think that he'll get snaps. I'm not saying he's not going to play, but like you said, situation-wise, you don't see Christian Kirk going anywhere anytime soon. You don't see Calvin Ridley going anywhere anytime soon. Zay Jones, they just got him from the Raiders. So it's kind of like that. He's competing for that wide receiver 4 spot with Tim Jones, Jamal Agnew, and I guess Kendrick Pryor, who's really not that good either.
I mean, again, it's Ridley, right? Ridley bumps Christian Kirk, and then Christian Kirk goes into a different spot, and that bumps a guy like Agnew. So Parker Washington's main competition is Agnew because he can also return punts. So if this is something they see like, okay, Agnew's not going to be here maybe next season, and that's what Parker Washington is, somebody who is an underrated prospect that they bring in as a guy that challenges Agnew to say, okay, is your roster spot safe for next year? Because that's what a lot of NFL teams do. It's like, well, why did they draft him? They already have a running back because that guy might not be on the roster next year,
Yeah.
and they need somebody to come in and be the starter next season. This is teams go in with a draft plan looking 5 years plus, right? There's more to it just than getting instant starters or guys that they see on the depth chart right now. There's long-term prospects, and that's what Parker Washington is.
Especially when he was projected, before the injury and everything, like a second round, at worst, third round guy. You're getting a really good value on him. You think he heals up just fine next year. By training camp, he should be good to go and everything. You're taking a role on a guy with a ton of upside. And I think one of the more underrated wide receivers in the NFL draft. Like I said, the injury concern was there, but you're taking a chance on that guy. If he falls to you that far down, you have no problem selecting him.
So that was the last Penn State Nittany Lions selected within the draft, and then a few have have signed with teams and now have new homes. And you do a lot with the Washington Commanders with the way that you cover them over on JTFB, Josh. So let's start, of course, because you already have Jahan Dotson in the fold. Now you have Mitchell Tinsley. So two former ex-wide receivers, literally the ex-wide receiver at Penn State. Now Jahan Dotson, of course, is going to be a starter. Mitchell Tinsley comes in at least. I think he is very intriguing. You dubbed him as the steal of the draft when we previewed this. Do you stand by that now, especially since he's with your Commanders?
I do. I'm telling you, I every time I was doing a mock draft, and I know those are thrown out the window as soon as the draft starts, I had, him falling in the 7th. And I'm like, man, the value is just too good there. Like you said, Jahan Dotson, he's a star already. Love Jahan to death. Saw him yesterday at the little draft party. Big Jahan fan. So we get another Penn State number 5 guy. And I'm telling you, I've been talking about him all day. Like I told you, I talked to him last night. I'm like, dude, like you're going to show out here. Like I truly think he gets a spot. So we have 4 guys that, in my opinion, are locks to be on the team next year. We only have like 6 under contract right now. Yeah. So we have Terry McLaurin, obviously one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Jair Brown, who's been hit or miss. He drops a lot, but then he catches like a really deep one for a touchdown randomly. But after that, like we lost Cam Sims. There's not much behind those 4 guys. So if Mitch can, I'm not saying he has to return kicks and punts, but that's something we're dying for on our team. And we signed a couple other guys who I think are going to compete for that spot. But I think he fits the role of that reliable, really good hands that we had in Cam Sims, who was a bit more of a bigger body guy, a little bit different than Mitch. But someone said this today, and it really hit me. They said Mitchell Tinsley plays like a combination of Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, with the release package of Jahan Dotson, but the way that they can separate, when they have to get deep, but then also after the catch. I'm like, man, I'm not saying he's going to beat Terry McLaurin or Jahan Dotson, but the way his game is, when you really just combine the two, the speed, the release package, the ability to separate, at the breaking point, the release, the stem, whatever, he finds a way to get the ball in his hands, and he's really good after the catch. I was watching the tapes back this morning, I guess it was like 3 a.m., that Purdue game where it's just like he catches one across the middle, he's breaking tackles, then back at Western Kentucky, he's doing the same thing, catching these screens, and you're like, oh, he's about to get wrapped up for like a gain of 2, and he somehow ends up behind the DB, but he doesn't run like a 4-3, 4-4. He's just very detailed in his routes, and I think that pays off in the long run. So I think he's wide receiver 5, maybe 6 for us right now going into camp. I like him that much.
Yeah, he'll be at least a dependable rookie. I don't want to say that he's going to be relied upon, but someone that they can say, hey, we need you for a couple plays here. Can you give us 25 good snaps? And I can easily see that for Mitchell Tinsley. PJ Mustipher was someone that did not get drafted, but is going to sign with the Denver Broncos. And I see what the identity is for the Denver Broncos, because when you look at the depth chart, it looks like under the direction of Vance Joseph once again. Now he's the DC instead of the head coach, but Sean Payton's out there, and it looks like they're going to be in a 3-4 situation. His combine numbers really hurt him. The injury really hurt him, because PJ Mustipher, projected once upon a time as a 2nd, 3rd round prospect, injury happens. He's kind of lost a gear. You hope that he gets it back. But again, like Mitchell Tinsley and like a lot of these Penn State prospects, Sean Clifford, Jair Brown, any of them, cerebral. They know what they're doing. PJ Mustipher is already one of the smartest guys in that defensive line room, in the defensive side of things, period, for Denver, just because of the way he processes the game. So I like the setup, just ultimately because I think PJ's knowledge and his intelligence will just get him by.
Yeah, and what you said about, playing a lot of just 3 on the line, and then obviously you're gonna have a guy like Drew Sanders rushing the quarterback, who I think that's gonna be a really good fit.
Yeah.
But you need a very reliable, big time nose tackle, D tackle, whatever you want to call it, who can line up zero tech over the center
and just be a nuisance, right? You're not
Yeah.
making plays. You're just making it harder for the interior. You want it when in the 3-4, the defensive lineman, I'm Josh, forgive me for cutting you off, but
I love defensive talk.
The 3-4, the defensive tackles are all designated to basically block for the linebackers.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not like, honestly, you're not like trying to go after the quarterback. Like
No.
you're not trying to leave the lane wide open in the middle. You're just trying to, first off, contain, like you said, then if you can pick up 2 blocks and just kind of open up a gap, like you said, for a linebacker, come up the middle, or if you're doing some kind of stunt with the outside linebacker in your end, then it opens things up, which fits with PJ Mustipher.
Exactly.
The numbers weren't there. He wasn't rushing the quarterback. He was stopping the run. He was doing the dirty work in the middle. He was clogging up the lanes with his big body. Like he wasn't worried about, he's not Dron Payne, Jonathan Allen, like, hey, I'm doing swim moves and getting to the quarterback and everything are full in the line. He is there to just clog it up, not let anything come his way, and then just let the second level get to the quarterback. So like you said, I think it's a good fit because of that. I prefer him more in that 3-4 than a 4-3, where he is asked like, hey, we need you to get to the quarterback, or we need you to be part of this stunt where you're picking up and going across. He can't do that. The combine numbers showed that he's not, swinging out to the outside. So I think this is a good fit. And once again, Vance Joseph, a phenomenal, very meticulous defensive coordinator, one of the best in the NFL. I know he didn't get drafted, but he's got to feel good about being here. He does have DJ Jones and Mike Purcell ahead of him. I like DJ Jones a lot from San Francisco. So it might be a while till he gets up in there, which is fine. Learn under these guys. You got Vance Joseph kind of mentoring you up. And I think he does have a future with the Broncos.
And like we said with Sean Clifford, you're going to a winning culture. Sean Payton won a Super Bowl, honestly should have went back to another Super Bowl if it wasn't for some bad calls in that NFC Championship game. But you go to a place where it's like winning is the expectation. Losing teams make losing plays, while winning teams and winning cultures make winning plays. And that's just going to benefit PJ Mustipher in the long run. A couple other prospects for Penn State, and Josh, this is where we will wrap it up. Jonathan Sutherland does not get drafted, even though a lot of NFL teams did like him, just not enough to take him in 7 rounds. Jonathan Sutherland and Chris Stoll, 2 special teams gamers, go to Seattle. So I think they get an instant boost because I can see Sutherland being a special team starter. And same with Chris Stoll, because right now Seattle does not have a long snapper.
Yeah, that's a big issue for Seattle, not having a long snapper.
A little bit, yeah.
But you mentioned that this is where you start getting the guys who are just willing to be on special teams. Obviously, they have a ton in the backfield at safety. Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, Jarek Reed behind that, Joey Blunt. So they've got some really good depth at that safety spot. So I think it's a good spot for him. Once again, he's got a lot of good pieces around him, but they do need some more bodies on special teams. Not too many guys at the linebacker spot that are playing special teams, like Jordan Brooks, Derek Hall, because they play outside linebacker. You're not going to have those guys on special teams. So this is where you need someone that has that the safety depth that can come in and make some big plays. And like you said, not having a long snapper is an issue. Who was it that didn't have a kicker, punter, or long snapper the other day? Was it the Rams? For like months. I think it was the Rams, literally until like before.
And only one quarterback. One quarterback, Matt Stafford.
So don't be the Rams, the other team in your division. Like fill in some of these holes. And he was one of the best. I know, once again, I have no clue why the 49ers took a kicker in the 3rd round. But still, special teams is very important. I mean, my team, we got Cheeseman, we traded up to the 5th to get a long snapper. Was he last year or the year before that? So it absolutely matters. So I think it's a good spot for him too. He's guaranteed to be the guy because they didn't have a guy. So I'd be happy if I was him.
And Chris Stoll is coming off of a season where he did not make a single mistake. He was named the best long snapper in the entire country. So he could end up being a Pro Bowler someday. I really do. He landed in just a good spot. They believe in him. They trust him. They're not going to try to have an open competition. And Chris Stoll is going to take that with respect. I don't think he's going to slack off and say, well, I'm the starter, so I can just go in there. No, he's going to hold down the fort. And Sutherland, I've heard so many good things about Sutherland. He will outwork you in the film room. You give him 6 hours of film, he'll watch it. No questions asked. every day.
And the dude has an insane motor. Like, it just seems like every single play he was nonstop. Like, he had a nose to get in on every single play, even if he was out of position. He found a way to get up in there. I liked him a lot too. I think he showed some versatility back there. A little bit smaller, obviously, but I think he still got some good game to him. But like you said, with Stoll, they're not about to sign another guy to be like, all right, Stoll, you got someone to compete with. Like, no, like he's going to be the guy for the season for him.
Yeah. Josh, this was fun. I like talking NFL draft too, not as much as yourself. Like the bar is set for you. I enjoyed watching your live streams when it was going on in real time. And then to come on here post NFL draft analysis, this was great. And hopefully, there's still a few other Penn State prospects out there. Nick Tarburton's one of them, Barney Moore and Jake Pinniger. So a couple more special teams guys. I thought Tarburton would have been signed at this point in time. Again, we're doing this on the final day of April, right?
Yeah.
So in due time, he will be there, but he's got to go to the right situation since he is more of your traditional run stuffing defensive end. And that's just tough to come by. Maybe to see if he can become a stand-up outside linebacker in a 3-4 system. Denver, be with PJ Mustipher, but time will tell. But Josh, this was incredible. The draft is once a year. It's special for a reason because I'd say, let's do this again, but in due time, of course. So
see you next year.
Yeah, exactly. But Josh, before we let everyone go, where can people keep up with your work that you do?
Yep, like you said, appreciate it, Zach. At Josh Taylor FB on Twitter, also Instagram, kind of post a little bit there with like graphics and stuff like that. But like I said, YouTube, JTFB, it's not just Washington stuff, it's also NFL draft talk. So got a lot to catch up on with the winners of the draft, the losers, biggest, values in the draft and so on. There's definitely some Penn State guys on that list. So appreciate it, Zach, and got to get to recruiting next too.
Yeah, that'll definitely be it. So can't wait to have those conversations next about the recruiting that's going to heat up and the transfer portal too, right?
Oh, portal got crazy today, especially if you're a Michigan State fan. You're hurting.
Yeah. So Josh, I look forward to it. Great. Thanks so much for the time again, and can't wait until we can get together the next time.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it.